why don't we get started? People are going to come on in, and we'll get them up to speed as we go through things. So for our headset listeners and people who've been on our social media pages, people that know Jeff and his circles and from social media and other things he has going on, it's awesome to have Jeff Overbaugh talking sports psychology. Going to make a few connections to headset, but then more so focus on more so your playing career, and then we're going to focus a little bit on transitions, and I'll discuss that. Jeff's going to go into it, and I think it's fascinating for all the members who are joining us. We'll put it on our story, and people will have time just to hop on and listen to our recording. So for your playing career, a few NFL stops, right? Started with LA. Then there's a Denver, Chicago, Minnesota, and Atlanta. Played your college ball at San Diego State. Both of those places, or all those places for pro and college, you were a long snapper, but you were telling me earlier in high school, a little bit of offensive line as well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So just knowing you a little bit and knowing your career from talking to you a little bit, other people at Headset, I thought it was an awesome opportunity just to be able to go through your experiences as an athlete and then be able to kind of get back and give back to some of our listeners, just your experiences. You know, I was mentioning earlier about transitions. When you move on from different levels of sport to different teams in sport, I think you got to be able to be prepared to take on the challenges that come with those transitions. So that's what we're going to hit on. And as people that we all know, see my friend Dave Delecki here from the Crease Goaltending Academy. I know you have a bunch of people coming in that know you. If you have questions, everyone, throw them out there, and Jeff and I will take care of them. So in regards to those transitions, the first one for me that I'm just so curious about is making that jump from high school and being recruited, but then coming on to San Diego State and playing college football at San Diego State. So if you can just kind of talk about the challenges, and then what mental skills do you need to be successful as you make that transition?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a pretty crazy transition for me. I actually had no offers about a week or two before signing day, and Coach Long, Coach Rocky Long, who is now retired from San Diego State, was the first one to offer me a full scholarship at my position in his history. Coach Long is one of the best coaches ever in the Mountain West, is the winningest Mountain West head coach, and to receive a scholarship from him at a position that he had never offered before was insane. So that set the bar really high for me, knowing that I had to come in and show out, you know, to back up his support. So that was, in my mind, that was a huge block for me. I need to show up and be ready to work and perform, you know, do my job and do it at a high level. So that was one of the challenges for me coming in. I think there was a little bit of a cultural challenge coming from, you know, Alaska to Southern California, a little bigger city, a little faster pace. There was something there. And then obviously, you know, academically, I know that's not the case necessarily for all your hockey guys up there in Canada, because you can go play juniors, right, without an academic obligation. But that was something for me that was certainly one of the issues of the transition getting into San Diego State. But I actually, fortunately enough for me, I had an awesome mentor in high school. Mr. Sean Prince was an administrator at my high school and actually got me going on a bunch of sports psych books, you know, athletic professional development type titles like Talent is Overrated or The Mind Gym. Nice. And a couple other books like that. So that those books actually, and it's very similar to the pod you guys did with Clint Malarchuk and his little story there with the book that he leaned on. That's mostly what I did. I would read a chapter once a week and really just try to take a principle from the book and apply it. And that was one of the biggest things that helped me overcome some of the challenges of making that transition that I just mentioned.
Yeah. And were there any things from those books or things that your mentor gave you that you kind of can remember from a few years back and went, that's a good one. That one resonated for me then, still does today. Is there anything that you can remember from that first year?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, and shoot, it's in the title. Talent is overrated. I think that was something that I was, you show up to San Diego State, a big D1 football program from Anchorage, Alaska, where I was the biggest lineman in the state at 230 maybe. Okay, that's an overreach. I wasn't the biggest lineman in the state, but I was one of the bigger guys. And then all of a sudden, everybody is 6'5", 315, trying to really not get lost in result-oriented thinking or just things that aren't process-oriented at all, and being locked in at how you work and how deliberate you are in your process. That was something that stood out then, and that stood out now. I know you want to get into it later about what I'm doing now. I'm transitioning from pro football to now, so that stood out now. And another one is I'm in a book club with a couple of buddies, some of the same guys I road tripped with that I mentioned earlier, and we're reading The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and one of the many themes in there is progress, not perfection. That was in every book I read. And shoot, maybe I think I've heard you guys say it too recently. That comes back almost daily for me because I get lost in the minutia.
Yeah, and I'm just even writing that down, and just what you're talking about, you brought me back to my junior hockey for us up in here in Canada. I'm up here in Toronto, but just moving away at a pretty young age and being with people who are older and bigger and stronger, and I wish someone way back when just said focus on the process. Because like you're saying, and I know I felt it and didn't do it quite well, was just thinking about the outcome. From making the team to, playing a game and looking at the result versus the process piece. If there's anyone who's on Instagram Live with us right now who's younger, that's going through that and going to transition into whatever team next year, I would highlight it. I'd go back to this recording after we're done and just highlight it. Huge in regard. Awesome.
For you a goalie, right?
Goalie, yep.
I mean, that's got to be the number one thing. I mean, pucks are going to get past you. That's almost inevitable. You have to come back to your process, I would assume.
Yeah, and if I can, and we're going to continue down this path, but not to go off the rails. If I could have gotten rid of a shot clock, so in hockey they had a shot clock where you had as many saves, they would show you how many saves versus shots you had. And I'd always compare myself with the shot. Like not even process, it'd be all outcome. And for goaltending, and even today, there's a certain amount of saves you should make. And I got carried away with that. Right, and I wish someone like yourself would have said, focus on the process, and I would have had a way different way. I would have a different type of thinking way back when.
Absolutely, and it sounds really cliche when people ask me like, how did you find success, in high school and college and beyond, and it's just reading those books. I was lucky enough to have a great mentor, obviously a great family situation, mom and dad always supporting me, but having that one voice that wasn't, my folks to say, hey, this is the way. And I'm so blessed to have had that influence in my life and the follow through too, to read the books and then apply the principles. But yeah. For everybody, it's beyond sport. Staying process oriented is the way to go.
I love that. And here's and from our IG lives, we love Garage 36. So Garage 36 wants us to put a little, whatever, however we're going to put it. Could we put on social media or give to our users some books from that book club and to be able to kind of give back? I think that's an awesome idea, and we'll do that. We'll have a chat, you and I, and we'll get the others at HeadSet to put a little book list together because so helpful. And even from a conversation I had 1 or 2 days ago was a pitcher in the minor leagues in baseball. And he played, I forget which Division I school, but he said that his coach gave him a sports psychology book focused on baseball. And he was a pitcher, like the ABCs of pitching. And he goes, he would just look through it and just highlight the parts that were important for him.
And absolutely. And that was, for me, you know, being in school, doing my textbook reading, studying for everything else, and having an additional book thrown at me. I wasn't trying to get lost in just crushing pages. It was take a concept and apply it. Take it from the room, bring it to the field. And that's it. It doesn't need to be a huge commitment. Just crush 5. And that's and I think Mr. Sean Prince is brilliant for starting me with the mind gym, because chapters are about 2-3 pages. That's all you have to do. One chapter, one concept, and then work at it, practice it, implement it.
Yeah. Yeah. And even to tie it back to us at HeadSet, that's what we talk about, right? So use the program 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, just crush them for that short period of time, and then you're good. Apply the principle in practice, go on to the next one, right? And the same thing for whatever content you can find that works for you, dig into it, and then figure out a way to apply it. And that goes from when you played, for people who play today. I think that's amazing. Hey, one question for you that I'm just coming up with right now, but transitions before we get to your pro playing days. What were some of the challenges year by year at San Diego State in getting ready? Because you have 4 years with a group of people. What would you say are some challenges, but also mental skills if we go from, and pick whatever year, whatever, but just from one season to the next?
I think freshman and sophomore kind of blurred together, certainly, because I was still I had to come in, and I was the only long snapper on scholarship, so obviously you can kind of push the chips to the middle of the table there and say, you know what, Jeff's probably going to be the starter. That wasn't the case. I wasn't getting first team reps at the start in fall camp as a freshman, which bothered me, because that was my goal. I wanted to show up. I wanted to be the guy. And so that was the big challenge freshman year. And I made a little error one time when we sent the field goal unit out in practice, and coach let the upperclassmen go in front of me. And I, never really having been in that position before throughout high school, whether that be football, hockey, or anything else. I looked at my special teams coach and I said, Coach, what did I do wrong? Why am I not in? And I got a little bit of a tongue lash, and you're not supposed to talk about that stuff on the field. You talk about that off the field in the office. That was probably the biggest tongue lashing I got as a freshman. But that was one of the biggest issues facing coming in, is like, am I going to start? How do I start? How do I need to navigate this situation to achieve my goal? And that was one little boo-boo that happened along the way there. Another one that stands out in my mind is having really the pro prospects start coming out of the woodwork once I was identified as, a pro prospect, being invited to the Senior Bowl, the premier college football all-star game, the NFLPA Bowl, having agents approach you, which is legal for any youth football athletes out there. Agents, you can talk with agents, you just cannot agree written or verbally to any compensation prior to finishing your college football experience. But that was the next biggest challenge in my mind, because that was the fastest thing to flip from what we talked about earlier with being process to result oriented. As all of a sudden there's this carrot now. You're an amateur, you're playing, you're with your boys, school is taken care of, luckily being on scholarship, food and lodging is taken care of. You get to just go be a kid, go play, and then all of a sudden there's that right around the bend. That was the tough bit for me to be able to snap out of it and say, hey, don't change nothing, be who you are as a person and as an athlete, and continue on your process goals. Because once that little shine was in front of you, that was difficult to come back to really play for the same reasons maybe.
Yeah. It's interesting. Just even as you mentioned a few times, And just kind of summarizing what you're saying is that you had to stay process oriented, but you always set a bar. It seemed like every year, freshman to sophomore, there was something to go for. The year after, from sophomore to junior, something to go for. And there'll be things that kind of get in the way of the process. But it's interesting that you just mentioned, like, it's almost a snap. Like, all right, I'm aware that this is happening, right? I just got to bring it back to what my goals are, my mission is, right? And the quicker that an athlete can do that in all sports, right? Football, hockey, the big four major sports, and all of these other amateur sports, is that, you know what, it's okay to. Like, it's the distraction's going to happen. It's just narrowing the amount of time in regards to that distraction to get that focus back. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, and that actually rings a huge bell. I forgot where I just read it, but some along the lines of the author saying intelligence is marked by being able to hold two opposing viewpoints at the same time and knowing both are true. And in the context that I read, it was like having despair, but also having hope at the same time. And what you're talking about is, you know, similar, but also to the point of understanding that something really tough is around the corner. Like, you got a big performance coming up, you're nervous, but you also have hope and confidence that you're going to do well. So that rung a bell with me right there.
I love it. As you're down that path, and what I've kind of learned being around athletics the last few years is that the best athletes in their sport, they cope the best. Doesn't mean they don't doubt. It doesn't mean that they don't get distracted, but they're able to bring it back to where they need to go. And that is huge. And that's what you're saying, right? So during a season, between seasons, and even your last year, as you start to believe more, right, in yourself, also from outside, those external pieces just saying, you know, we see something in you, that you have to be able to go, all right, I got to come back to that big game. It could be a Senior Bowl. I'm sure there's lots of big games that senior year in your conference and abroad that you had to go through. So I think that's just those underlying themes, right, of our talk so far. I think that's a big one is, you know what, stay to that process. There will be distractions. That's for everyone, but it's being able to rein it back in, cope, to be able to move forward on your path. Love it. I love it. Mm-hmm. Hey, so we're going from Senior Bowl, and then you get picked up for the NFL. Mm-hmm. Right? And that was the Rams, right? Rams
correct.
Were so the Rams sign you, correct? Mm-hmm. And then tell us, and we'll go through the same transition. You're going from being a senior at a big school in the States, and now you're going pro. If you can talk about the challenges and then those mental skills to help you through.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, and that's a crazy transition period, is going from amateur sports to playing for money, and not to mention it's the creme de la creme. You know, it's the best guys from the best schools across the country. Like I said earlier, speed of the game was a big transition. But in terms of moving from college to pro, it was interesting going through the process of, you know, going to the Senior Bowl, doing pro day, going through draft day, you know, not hearing my name be called, which isn't that big of a surprise, seeing that I am a long snapper. But that's, you know, and I knew it was a long shot, but then when it didn't happen, that was still tough. Definitely fortunate enough to sign with the Rams right after the draft and get started on that career. Man, a lot of stuff flooding back. Just pretty cool moment. Really, everything was awesome. Everything was great. Everybody was cool. It was a wonderful experience. But just kind of showing up, knowing you gotta beat one of the 32 people in the world who's best at what it is that you two do. That's, you know, that's a mountain you got to climb. So that's something I had to face, and that was probably the premier challenge of the transition, is beating out somebody who's done it well for 5 years.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back just kind of what you're saying, and it's interesting just kind of seeing you and you're thinking about, like, it just comes back to you and you kind of go, wow, like what an interesting, amazing time. But I'm going to bring it back to just what you said in regards to when you left home to come to San Diego State. Like, you're going into a new environment. Everything is new. Hey, those people at SD State were the best right there. And now you're going to a higher level where those guys are the best of the best. And yeah, I mean, remember my days too. It's like, you know what, these people are really good, but now it's time to be able to kind of prove, right, that I am making my way, right? And it's what I like what you did is like, okay, now I got to come in and perform, right? And having a plan to be able to perform is pretty important. It sounds like, but it sounds like it's 4 years later, but the process, even though it's different, is kind of the same again in regards to your mental process.
Yeah, very, very much so. And I had a coach coming out. Michael Husted was kicked for the Bucks. I believe he's the all-time, if not one of the all-time leading scorers for the Bucks. He, I mean, pretty blatantly just sat me down. I was like, dude, be coachable, but don't change. What you've done has worked. You're here for a reason. Don't change anything. You don't have to go be a superstar. Play within yourself. And again, he did emphasize being coachable and being adaptable. But for the most part, don't overreach. Play within yourself. That was an important message to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I ask you, like, how did it feel just to have someone kind of guide you in that sense?
Oh man, so blessed. So many great mentors, starting with my parents, starting with Mr. Sean Prince, Coach Numi, Coach C, from high school to college to pro. And lucky enough to lean on Mike Husted down there in Solana Beach, pretty close to Dr. Galea down there, and same with John Carney, NFL legend, NFL
another
vet.
kicker, right?
Yeah, 23 years, got a gym down there in Carlsbad, and a stable, a specialist who work out with him because they've done it for so long. 23 years in the league, you've seen a couple things, and being able to lean on those guys going into rookie mini camp was invaluable, and it's priceless, very much so priceless.
Yeah. And we Jay and I, Dr. Galea, did a webinar a few weeks ago, and we were talking about social support. And that's one where athletes, for the most part, they're networked, right? They have a lot of friends, their family, right? They have a network. But what I find surprising at times, and now I'm doing this for a while, not as surprising, but being able to pick your network to help you at certain times. I think that's pretty important in regards to just being able to understand who you need at certain times, right? And that's key. And you mentioned that from when you transitioned from Alaska to San Diego State, like, you had those people. And then when you make that transition from college to pro, it sounds like you had those people in your network, right? Or you kind of gathered them along the way to be able to help you out. And I think that's another key in regards to transitions.
Absolutely, and that's, I would say, one of the coolest parts about team sports is basically showing up, and you got 100 guys to lean on if you're in college. If it's pro, you got 50, 60 guys to lean on. Being able to jump in with my high school, service high school, and coach the cross-country skiing this past year it's a much different landscape. It's a socially isolating sport, and I don't know how much you felt that way as a goalie, but that's one of the coolest parts about football is you got a group of guys to lean on. That's one thing I really enjoyed about football.
Yeah, and as you say, be it an individual sport or a team sport, even those individual sports, athletes still need to figure out who they're going to lean on, right? And they're out there on their own, and you can say a goalie or a pitcher in baseball is on their own, but Carney and Husted, who are kickers, kind of have that similar. They're a team sport athlete, but they're kind of on their own. So, if you are on an offensive line, you're working together, or you're a snapper with your group, you still have to kind of navigate who are you going to lean on to be able to kind of get through those tough times or those transitions that we're talking about. And again, they're going to be challenging. It's just shortening the amount of time to be able to make it work for you.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
So in regards to your NFL career, you go from LA and then the next stop is Denver.
Correct.
Is that so? Again, transitions, and this is where if there's a part of our talk that I was just going to wait for, and I'm going to kind of back up here. How is it going from one team to the next?
Man, it was interesting to kind of give you and everybody who's tuned in a little overview. Is I signed with the Rams right after the draft when I declared. Was with them for all of fall camp minus the fourth game. I was cut in the first cuts. Worked out for a couple, 3 teams that year. Ended up signing with the Broncos on a futures contract, which is just signing the day after the regular season ended. Was with the Broncos all off season. Ended up playing for the Bears in the preseason that year. And then I worked out for 16 teams my second year out. 16 teams, flying, driving around the country, which is an awesome opportunity. Not many guys get that many chances to show themselves in the National Football League. And finally was able to make something work out. Signed with the Vikings, played with them for 3 games. Ended up playing the following year with the Falcons a little bit, and then played in the AAF, the Alliance of American Football, this past spring a year ago. So jumping around from team to team was, at the time, not a lot. I think looking back now, I think it was a much bigger deal than I thought it was at the time. And most of that has to do with, I'm sure, rationalizing it like, oh, I got this, like, this is cake, no big deal. I haven't, and a lot of it is I have an opportunity, like, let's go play. That was awesome. But to also have, always having my parents, always having a place to come back to, having that safety net there was huge because I knew I could put myself out there and really roll the dice and, go for the goal and try to accomplish my dream. And that was really huge to have that safety net the whole time. Getting my college degree was a confidence booster. That was something that was awesome to be able to accomplish. So yeah, those transitions going from team to team is a lot. You have to. I mean, there's 60 new names to learn, not counting the coaching stuff. Yeah. There's new terminology to learn. There's not too many ways to skin a cat in the punt game as a long snapper, but there's some changes. And then there's getting to know your guys. You got new guards. You got a new personal protector. You got a new punter. Could be left-footed. There's a lot of small, detailed factors that go into each new team that bounce from one team to the next. Not if you're only going from one team to the second team, not too big of a deal. But 6 teams in 3 years, that's a lot of change. And I got good at it. So. But looking back now, yeah, I think it was a little more than I may have thought it was.
Yeah. Oh, and even and one of our listeners is going 16 tryouts, and then he also adds, like, the way you said it, right? What an awesome opportunity, right? And that's key, right? And that's where I was kind of waiting to listen to you, is that you lived it. If you were to read it and go, I did too, and I'm like, I can't wait to hear how he handled those transitions and new teams. But I didn't know you had those tryouts in between, like all those tryouts. And that to me is like, and you got to correct me, I don't know if is it a one day that you come in and you try out and you go? Is it multiple days? Like, how does it work?
So there's other ways. There's a bunch of ways you can do it. Primarily, I participated in one day tryouts. You can be involved in a mini camp as a tryout athlete. I believe there's extended tryouts, but I worked out maybe like 20 to 25 times in a tryout capacity, in a one-day tryout capacity for NFL teams over my 3 years, and it's a fly-in workout, and hopefully they want to fly you in the night before, put you up, work you out, and then get you on a flight, get you a physical, and then get you on a flight if you don't get the gig. Sometimes it's hey, we just want to put a list together. We want to know who's out there. We don't have a need right now. We just want to understand who's working out, who's in shape, who's skilled at this moment in case something does happen. Sometimes it's, hey, somebody's down, you're up. That's what happened for me in Minnesota is Kevin McDermott got hurt the week of Christmas, and they flew me in the following Monday, and I knew it was this is a job opportunity. It was me and an NFL vet by the name of, I'm blanking on the name right now, but it was my 16th workout that year. I was like, I'm getting this job. Let's go. I had to make my mind up, and was fortunate enough to get that opportunity and get the job. A couple hilarious stories about tryouts for me include being in Yellowstone with my family and getting a call from the Saints, having to bust 5 hours back to, Salt Lake City. I went from the red eye midnight to 3 a.m. to New Orleans. Didn't even get to the hotel. Went straight to the facility.
Wow.
Worked out, and it didn't end up getting the job. It was a preseason workout, and they didn't end up signing anybody, if I'm remembering right. And then having to fly back to San Diego through Minnesota. So basically 48 hours, no sleep, flying across the country. Awesome time, awesome story, one for the books, but it was a challenge. It was a challenge.
Wow. Hey, and I'm sure I'm going to make you go back to your memory bank here. So for those tryouts, right, be it you're there for a day or two and for different reasons, could you compare ones that I was on? For whatever they made me go through in regards to the tryout, I was on, and maybe compare it versus a time where you went, man, it didn't work out. And were there any differences between those outside of you getting the job or not? But it's just nailing a tryout and what you do to get ready for the tryout and succeed in it outside of contract, and those times where a time where you went, yeah, it wasn't working.
Not a cop-out answer. Honestly, you can't see the snap once you get to that level. You cannot watch the snap. You don't know where the snap goes, and you're not hanging out at the facility chopping up film with the coach after. You don't know how you snapped.
Okay.
Because you're blocking. I suspect, and I always felt the ball came off well. When I did snap, and always got good feedback from whoever. Sometimes the punter would catch, sometimes it'd be an assistant special teams coach. I'd always get told complimentary things. So the only thing I could come out of a workout evaluating is how I blocked, or if they combine tested us, if we ran, knowing how fast I felt. If I felt good, let's see here. It was always the worst. I was in San Diego for the most part. Actually, once I was in Anchorage when I got a call from the Washington Redskins and flew red eye again. That was an opportunity to get a job. I didn't get that one. Big Rick Lovato got it. He's now with the Eagles, Super Bowl champ. Shout out Rick. Good friend. And that's another interesting is your work. It's a fraternity. It's a small knit community. There's only so many long snappers in the world. Chances are you train with them. Guess what? It's you versus your buddy for a job. So that's an interesting factor of those workouts. So the only thing that in my mind is fitting your answer is I flew going West Coast to East Coast for workouts was the worst. Because you couldn't get to sleep until 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and then you're up at 4 rocking and rolling, and go ahead and throw in a 4-hour flight there, little bit of dehydration. I hit the field once in Jacksonville, just legs were dead. No. That was one time. Here's another time. So I played Falcons week 1 of the 2018-19 season. Ended up, the vet came back healthy, so I was back on the street. I flew back to California. The Monday night game happened. Oh, no, we played, sorry. A lot of stuff coming back right now. Thursday, we played Thursday night, week 1, the big show. Ended up the Raiders ended up flying back home that Monday to California. The Raiders snapper got hurt Monday night. I had just done a cross-country flight, driven an hour up to Temecula, California.
Yeah.
Raiders snapper gets hurt Monday night. Tuesday morning, hour-long drive back to San Diego, flight up to Oakland. I was on the field. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Oakland area at all, but the airport is 5 minutes from the Raiders facility. I was on the field, no joke, within 10 minutes of my foot coming off the plane. My legs were dead.
Wow.
I just could feel how just unresponsive everything was, and it has a lot to do with playing Thursday night, flying across the country and whatnot. But from a mental performance standpoint of how I performed, I couldn't answer that because we don't see the film and I don't watch the snap. But that's the one time when my legs were just shot.
Hey, let's go with, and this is fascinating, just all your different experiences and zero back onto the mental skills. If there is one or two in regards to from the workouts to the travel, what would you say would be for, it could be your position or just the sport itself, the most important or one of the most important that an athlete should work on or you had to work on?
Tell me if this doesn't answer your question, but to me, it's process. And I know we've said it at every step here, every transition, but with things being uncertain, and that applies to sport, where I was in my sport, and certainly times now globally, is having a process, having something to lean on when you have nothing else to lean on, knowing your goals, the way that you have to position your body, the result-oriented goal. That is what I leaned on. And I had a process for traveling. I was trying to get to bed at 8 because I knew a call was coming, or I was expecting a call was going to come from the East Coast because it's a physical game. Guys get hurt.
Yeah.
Trying to go to bed early, having a bag packed, having a contingency plan to get to the airport. And then obviously, nutritionally, getting some water in. But most importantly, when you get on the field, knowing how you need to position your body to perform well and having process goals every step of the way, because that's what it comes down to. It's what you have to lean on when there's nothing else.
That's lovely. And even for what's going on currently in athletes and football and outside, just I think that process and leaning on something, but what I hear from you is you are deliberate. Mm-hmm. From the bags packed to your nutrition, to the physical workouts, to the people you're going to lean on, to what you're going to do when you're on the plane. It could be sleep. Like you mentioned that, it sounds so simple, but athletes right now, because they're not in the sport, are not in that routine, right? And even when you hear for young athletes, even when they're in the season, they're not getting proper rest and recovery. So that's work, right? Mm-hmm. You're hearing from a pro right now saying, man, I worked on it and I'm a professional and I have to, but if I'm younger and listening to this, I'm going, yeah, I can start doing that. I can start. And it's like you from your mentors, right? Or send from a book. Yeah, I can do that because that's what you need. That's the recipe, right? And that's wonderfully said, right? It's deliberate. Yeah. It's processed, but it's deliberate.
It's wild coming from, and I don't mean to jump the gun here in terms of stealing your thunder, but in terms of the transition from pro to now, is coming from a very high level of sport, from D1 to pro. And coming in and working with high school athletes when, I wish I did a better job of that going through college and pro, is giving more of my time to younger athletes. Unfortunately, I didn't. But I'm doing that now and working with younger athletes who, want to have a life. They want to do well in school. They want to have a social life, notwithstanding a global pandemic. And then being like knowing when to push, knowing when to say like, hey, you need to be more serious about your sleep, be more serious about nutrition. If these are your goals, this is what's necessary to attain those. And knowing when to push and knowing when not to push. So that's been a really interesting variable of trying to pass on, some of the things I learned.
Yeah, and like you were saying, that's from now teaching and helping people learn is that, we all learn differently. Like you learned and you're continuing to, but in your playing days, just kind of learning and what works for you. But it feels like trying to give those thoughts and skills back to others, but knowing that they may be, it's different, right? Different time, different sport, but it's still important. Like these are things that you need to take care of, right? You have your own way of doing it, your own process, but it still needs to be done, right? And it sounds
Absolutely.
like that's something that you're doing and learning and giving back for other people to learn. And to me, that's when you hear about those coaches like you talked about, right? And I don't remember all the names, but Coach Long, like that coach is maybe one you're still in touch with, maybe not, but you're going to remember Coach Long. You're going to remember the teammates and what they say, and you've made it your own. And now in coaching and teaching, you're now giving it back, which is, and that's learning, right? That's the beauty of, be it sport, classroom, on a field somewhere, wherever it is in the world, you still have those parts that they're still valuable, right? Beneficial. Hey, and I'm going to open it up to people who are listening if they have questions. I got one more for you in regards to because now you're teaching different sports, right? So you mentioned it. You mentioned it to me before. You mentioned it today. How is it teaching and coaching a sport? And I don't know if you did the skiing part. That part, maybe you did. But you're coaching cross country skiing.
Yeah, I did ski.
Okay, you did. Okay, all right. Didn't know. We talked about the football. We have talked more about the football, but you did ski. Okay. How do you coach a sport that you didn't maybe do as much over the last few years? And back to it.
So, certainly, no, it's a valid point. Absolutely. I did ski. It's a part of the culture here in Anchorage. It's of the U.S. cross country, the Nordic team that was just named. 23 of the names, guys and gals. 11 of them are Alaskans by birth or by association. So it is heavily a part of the culture here. And you know what? At the outset, I didn't do too much technique coaching. It's more of, I was involved in the strength side of things and the conditioning side of things. But it was so much fun. It was a breath of fresh air, maybe probably needed for me. I knew I needed a little bit of a break from football. So, you know, if anything, I hate to be cliche about like who rescued who, like adopting dogs or whatnot, but it was a breath of fresh air for me. It was awesome to see a new landscape. It was a ton of fun to you know, be with elite athletes. We have stud skiers, guys and gals here. We have athletes on our team who competed internationally this year. We have athletes recently graduated from a high school are now on the U.S. ski team. So it's a ton.
Wow.
I hate to keep yelling fun at you, but I had so much fun being a part of the cross country team this year, or coaching. But you know, on the technical side of things, wasn't too involved. No.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Like just even kind of seeing a smile on your face, like opportunity without you even saying it. It sounds like an opportunity to be around really fun, interesting, high-level athletes, and maybe it's something you're coming back to, but you're just enjoying being around these like-minded people, right? A question for you, again, one of our favorites, Garage 36. Did you ever get injured, and how did you mentally get back?
Man, I was very fortunate. Incredibly fortunate. No major injuries, no bones, no ligaments, nothing. I'm happy I'm not really in a position to answer this question for you, but I obviously bumps and bruises, you know, a little bit of tendonitis, and that's tough. That adds up, and that's what I'm really excited about the prospect and the intervention of HeadSet for youth athletes, masters athletes, you name it, beyond. Performance psych is beyond athletics. But that really they add up. Little bumps and bruises, it takes a toll. It's mental energy. It's mental resources to have to manage that, go into the training room, get some ice, get some heat. it adds up, and it's another thing that you just have to be prepared for. And that's what I think. There's a tremendous possible intervention with headset and having some sort of metric of measuring injury and how to get better with it, because we're gonna have to measure if we're gonna get improve it. So
yeah, and maybe this is another IG Live or a podcast together, and maybe bring some others from Headset on or athletes who have been through it. But I love what you said about energy, and for an injured athlete, but also just for someone being outside their sport, maybe they're not injured right now, but they're at home. It's really thinking about the mental energy as energy. So if you can kind of control that energy, be aware of it, that some energy is being used in places that maybe you don't want it to be, and then being able to conserve it, I think is absolutely important, right? It's been a while since playing for me, but being able to think about things I have control over, I think would be really big for any athlete, right? And being able to have trust in that process. And again, we're going to kind of cut things, but I've been watching with my son, he's into soccer, and on Netflix, they have this one with FC Barcelona.
mm-hmm.
And they're following the team, I think it's 2018. And there's one athlete, I think he's a midfielder. My son doesn't know his name. But if you hear him, he tore his ACL. But he's just talking about, I've been hurt before. I know how to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching this going, damn, that's really smart with the injury. He's injured, but he's like, I had to listen to my body. I had to go through the process. I'm going to measure out the stages or steps. And it really felt like he was at ease with it. Where then you hear others who might be using too much mental energy, thinking about what goes on with the injury and things out of their control. So even in injury, right? And just from what you said about the bumps and bruises, there are people who take it on better than others. And that's key. It's energy.
Absolutely. And Cousin Larry, I see your question right there. Other than injuries, other than physical, do I have a comment? I think I just really want to run with what Peter's saying, and kind of this theme here is it's resources, it's mental energy. And I was actually fortunate enough to interview Dr. Galea, when I changed my degree at San Diego State to psychology, because I was interested in sports psych coming up through my undergrad degree there. And that was one of the biggest things that stood out to me of when I was interviewing Jay about, the day-to-day, what are the challenges of being a sports psychologist. And what I took away from it is I was really interested in, applied sports psych and principles. And hearing from Jay, it sounds like most of the work, and not to get into like any HIPAA stuff, but the individual's got to be right. It really doesn't physical is one thing in and of itself, but if there's relationship issues off the field, if there's troubles with the law, if there's academic issues, those are all draining. And if the individual isn't right when they come to the field, the rink, the court, the racetrack, what have you, it's about being fresh, having a clear mind when you get to the field. And I think that's there's a bunch of tools here on Headset that can help athletes at all stages get to that place, get to a clear head.
Yeah, and thank you for being a part of it with us at Headset, and it's having you and others within the team that you live it. You have lived it, you live it, you'll continue to live it, and these are those little nuggets of information. Right now, it's different. People, we're still reading books. Please, we'll give you a book list. But it's going back to our interview and getting ready for maybe going to a combine as a baseball player, 17, and going to a combine, or a senior in the NCAA and going, remember what Jeff said in regards to that one IG Live that I can use. And that's all you really want. You just want it from a person, a product, or a training system that you get a nugget of information that you can make your own. And I think this is what we're doing. You do it with your athletes that you work with. I'm sure you do it every day, just on the street when someone sees you, right? Like just giving your time. And I just appreciate your time. And we'll do it again. Like this is, if you're okay with it,
Love
Let's do
to.
this. This is tons of fun, and I
Love
hope
to.
everyone got something out of this and just enjoyed it, just like I did. So, buddy, I appreciate it. We'll wrap things up, but we'll do it again. How's that sound?
Yes, sir, man. That sounds great. I'd hop on whenever. Love chopping it up, and thanks for having me on.
Buddy, thank you so much. All right, everyone, we're gonna be out of here. Well, until next time, Jeff. Thanks, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Bye bye.
Bye.